Hi, I'm Mike Troy, host of the American Revolution podcast on the Airwave Media Network. This podcast is the origin story of the United States, how we went from colonies ruled by a king to the democratic republic that we have today. The American Revolution podcast tells the story of the revolution from beginning to end. Please subscribe for free. We're available on all major podcast platforms. I hope you will join me today on the American Revolution podcast.
Lisa, it's the holidays. It's Christmas time for some, and you are getting ready to make something called torta. Can you set the scene for me as to where this all goes down?
Sure. So it means different things in different parts of the world, even in different parts of the Philippines. For me, torta is a pound cake, basically, that my family makes every Christmas.
Elisa Huff is an editor at the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, one of the research centers of the Smithsonian. She wrote a story for Smithsonian magazine about the importance of carrying on her family's Filipino torta recipe.
It's always a home operation for me. I tend to do it by myself late at night, and it's a lot of pans, it's a lot of ingredients, it's making a big old mess. But it's the taste of Christmas to me. It also ends up being like my Christmas presents to a lot of my family members, so that's the labor I put into gift making.
Tell me more about that association you have between Christmas and the torta. Why do you have that relationship between the two?
Every Christmas, when I was a little kid, this was something that my mom would make. We would often have Filipino food as our Christmas dinner, big family event. What I remember as the one constant was this cake, the torta. And I remember as a little kid learning from her how to make it. It's not like a terribly complicated process, but it does take a long time. One part of this cake is that it's lined in what I later learned are called brioche pans. They're scalloped edges. And before putting the batter in, you line it with a parchment paper or a tissue paper. And because of the scalloped edges, it's very time-consuming to do that. But that's something I have a clear memory of helping my mom with when I was a little kid. And that's why, to me, when I think about torta, it tastes like Christmas. When I think about Christmas, I want the torta. I have to have the torta.
From Smithsonian Magazine and PRX Productions, this is There's More to That, the show that celebrates stories and feasts from around the world. I'm Ari Daniel. In this episode, a couple of family holiday recipes, where they come from, how they're carried forward, and more generally, what traditional food means in our lives. Plus, why the original Jamaican jerk was cooked underground. Stay tuned. What is torta exactly? Can you describe what it looks like, tastes like?
It's a round, again with the scalloped edge, domed on the top. It's vibrant yellow because the recipe calls for 10 egg yolks.
Oh, wow.
And then the top, after you bake it, you sprinkle it with sugar, so it's kind of sparkly. It's very dense, it's very rich. And when it's fresh out of the oven, it just tastes heavenly.
What does it smell like when it's in the oven?
It's flavored with vanilla. I think that's the dominant smell. Like vanilla ice cream in a cake form.
Can you just walk me through like what the ingredients are, how you're putting it together, what's happening before you put it in the oven?
This is the recipe that my mom printed out for me when I started college. And as you might be able to see, the page is caked with flour and oil.
Yeah, it's been battered by time.
Yeah, I'll tell you these ingredients and you might be able to tell like why we only make this at Christmas, because it's just so rich and not the kind of cake you want to be eating on the regular. It's a lot of sugar. It's a lot of butter. It's a whole lot of egg yolks. Even more oil on top of the butter. And then flour, baking powder, salt, evaporated milk. It's the only time I ever have to buy evaporated milk goes into this recipe. It's such a velvety batter. The recipe that I have, that I've always used, it makes a ton of cakes. I want to think the recipe is written this way and was passed on to me this way because we eat them at home among our family, but then we gift them out as well. So this is a recipe that's meant to feed a whole lot of people, not just you.
Tell Tell me about that communal aspect about it.
I just learned this from my aunt. She remembers as a kid that another Filipino family made this recipe and gifted the cakes to my family for Christmas, and my grandma really loved it and asked them for the recipe, and that's what I have now. When I was a kid and my mom would make this every year, this was like her present to her mom, to my grandma. We didn't buy things for her. She didn't need more things, but she needed cake. I only make it now when I know that I'm going to be around a lot of family and a lot of friends who I can give it all to, because you would die if you ate this whole recipe yourself.
Is there any sort of, any special outfit or something that goes with it?
I have an apron that belonged to my mom. My mom had been a cartographer, and she would come into me and my brother's elementary school classes and do map making lessons for us. And so my brother's third grade class drew my mom an apron that has all their names on it and little globes and other little maps. So when I'm baking one of my mom's recipes, I like to wear that apron to embody her a little bit. My mom passed away 15 years ago, so a lot of how I feel connected to her still is through the recipes that she passed on to me. Especially at Christmas, it feels so important to me to carry on some of her spirit within our family and for myself to keep making these recipes that were important to her.
So when you taste torta, you think of her as well?
For sure, yeah. Probably more than the association with Christmas. That's what fills my heart.
When Elisa wrote her piece about torta, she did some online and family research.
That's when I realized that I'd never heard of anyone else, Filipino or not, making this recipe. My mom is full Filipino. I'm half Filipino. Because she was the one who made it, I think I just figured this was a Filipino thing. And it is, but not as ubiquitously as I might have thought. In a lot of Spanish-speaking countries, torta is a sandwich. That's probably what most people are familiar with.
Yeah.
In some parts of the Philippines, it more often refers to an omelet, stuffed with meat, very different. But in the Visayan Islands, which is where my grandmother's from, it does refer to this cake. It's eaten during any fiesta, so Christmas, but other saints' days as well. And I did find some other recipes that call themselves torta something something, like some modifier on it. The main differences that I found between those recipes and mine are, any cake you make today, you're probably leavening it with baking soda, baking powder. But more traditionally, it was leavened with tuba, which is a fermented coconut wine. We flavor ours with vanilla, but traditionally it might be anise. Very different.
Sure.
And where we sprinkle ours just with sugar on top, others sprinkle with sugar and cheese.
Elisa, what was that like for you to put your family's tradition into this larger context?
It makes you rethink what you knew growing up, to learn that what you thought is tradition is only maybe your tradition. But that, I think, is what makes it really special, that it doesn't have to be a tradition among an entire country, a whole population, a whole region. It can be a tradition just among our family, and that's still really special.
What do you think it means to your family that you continue to make the torta?
After my mom passed and I became like the torta baker of the family, my grandma was very appreciative. She was diabetic at the time. We should not have been gifting her these cakes, but it was her favorite gift to receive. Now I share it with my partner's family. They are not Filipino. They love this cake too.
You mentioned that most of the year you think of yourself as half Filipino, but at Christmas you're trying to more fully connect with that part of your identity and heritage. Why do you think it's important for you at this time of year to be more in touch with that part of yourself?
I think it's because those are the cultural traditions that are the most tangible to me. It was during Christmas that we would cook all this Filipino food. We would have a Filipino parol, which is a star-shaped lantern hung up in our window. That's another very traditional Filipino thing that you'll see in the U.S. during Christmas time, these star lanterns hung up in the front windows.
What does it mean to you to be the one who's now making the torta and passing this tradition along to the younger members of your family and sustaining it for those who know it?
It feels like a big responsibility. Like, I don't want to mess it up, and I don't want to forget all the little details that my mom taught me. And I'm afraid I already have,
You had a great line in your piece. I really loved it. You said, traditions change and grow, uproot and reroot at the macro level of nations to the micro level of families. And that doesn't make them any less valuable or meaningful. It makes them ours. Can you say what you meant by that?
It's just breaking so many misconceptions for me that a tradition has to be old and it has to be codified and it has to be ubiquitous to be a tradition. And what I was beginning to learn is that that's not the case at all, that traditions are living. And for a tradition to be living, that means that they evolve, that they change, that they adapt to different times and places as communities or families move or are displaced or reacting to climate change or war, It doesn't have to be negative things, but as they move to the U.S. to try and start a better life, as was the case for my grandparents. But that traditions also can begin anew.
Thank you so much, Elisa. This was really enjoyable. And thanks for bringing to life this tradition from your family.
Thank you.
We're leaving Elisa's kitchen now and heading to the Caribbean. Where do I find you today, Vaughn?
I am at home in Kingston, Jamaica, weeks after Hurricane Melissa.
Vaughn Stafford Gray is a Jamaican journalist and magazine publisher. He's also a graduate of culinary school. Vaughn wrote an article for Smithsonian magazine about the history and importance of Jamaican jerk. I want to acknowledge that as we move into the holidays, this isn't really a normal year for Jamaicans. Hurricane Melissa slammed into the island at the end of October, and recovery is still underway, as I understand it. How have you and your communities been impacted by the hurricane, Vaughn?
It's hard to even try to wrap your mind around what recovery looks like. The care of our people, especially those who are elderly, children, and families who are struggling with poverty. But the other aspect, and I'm happy that you brought it up again about the holidays, is that the hurricane tore through what we call our breadbasket parish, St. Elizabeth, which provides the majority of produce for Jamaica. So we are having an issue with what the holidays would look like when what is available is now so much more expensive than what it was, or just not available.
Yeah. Given that this may not be a typical holiday season for many Jamaicans, can you tell me, Vaughn, about how you are usually preparing for the winter holidays? Are you hosting? Are you cooking? Are you out shopping?
Well, that's one thing about Jamaicans, is that we are resilient. We can make a celebration out of nothing. Even if it's a pot of soup or a bowl of porridge, we'll always have something to be grateful for, but also enough to share. This holiday season, my father passed away 3 years ago. My mother and I are hosting my aunt and my cousin and his wife, which we do every year. So I'm doing oxtail lasagna and a roast chicken. And I cured my own leg of pork. Potatoes, we'll have some rice and peas. We have our garden salad. It won't have as many vegetables, but there'll be lettuce and tomatoes and bell peppers. And I think I'm going to do some curried chickpeas as well. And we're really grateful that we have these items to still have a very meaningful holiday, because this one is really one for the books for everyone that this hurricane has touched and impacted.
And what's for dessert?
Oh, so we're making a Christmas cake or black cake. That's Caribbean take on plum pudding. So it's something that was brought to the Caribbean through colonialism, and each island has their own version of black cake because the enslaved would have to use whatever they had on the plantation to recreate these dishes for their enslavers. My mother's recipe actually calls for prunes, sultanas, raisins, currants, lots of port, white wine, and stout. So we make a really rich cake that's steamed, and it gets better with age. It was my favorite cake, so it won't last 3 months as people tend to keep it.
Well, I'm impressed you already have your menu laid out in advance like that.
I absolutely love Christmas. It's not just the sentimentality of the holiday for me, but ever since I was a young child, I loved food. And I knew I was going to go to culinary school, not to become a chef, but my whole idea was to become an editor-in-chief of a lifestyle magazine. But for me, food is such an important vessel. It also is one of the few parts of every culture that we can pass down to other generations without it being so precious, in the sense of that here is this and make it your own. So it's one of those living, breathing heirlooms that we have.
You said roast chicken, right? Are you having a jerk chicken?
Yes, there is jerk chicken on the menu.
What is jerk exactly?
So jerk is actually two things. It's not just a seasoning blend, but it's more of the process. Many people will know Jamaican jerk or think they've had Jamaican jerk because they've bought a seasoning blend. There's both dry and then there's wet. The real way is to use both. So the wet seasoning, if you only can get one, is a jerk paste. The major part of jerk seasoning is pimento or allspice. So pimento berries, Scotch bonnet peppers, green onions, ginger, and thyme. That's the base of a good jerk seasoning. Then you marinate it, but this is something I've fought for a very long time, is how to codify what jerk is. And the government has been trying the same way that champagne can only be called champagne if it's called champagne reason, that we want to ensure that if you say Jamaican jerk, that it's done in the traditional way. And what that is that it is smoked with pimento wood and under pimento leaves. So historically, the Maroons who invented jerk, and those were formerly enslaved people who escaped the plantations and went into the mountains, which the British could not traverse. To feed themselves, they would hunt boar. And then the Taino, who were indigenous Indians, taught them how to use the bushes around to cure the meat. So there was bird's eye chilies and pepper elder. That's now turned into Scotch bonnet pepper. But they would season the meat and then bury it and smoke it on the ground so that cooking it over fire wouldn't create smoke, which then would give away their location to the British forces. Hundreds of years later, real jerk centers, and that's what we call restaurants that serve jerk. So same in your barbecue pits, we call them a jerk center. The real good ones on the island will do the traditional method of pimento wood and the pimento leaves. But there is an issue with pimento wood if we're going to have enough for future generations as well, because a number of years ago, we came perilously close to not having enough pimento wood for the island, much less enough for anybody else. But our government stepped in and we have a plan in place now for that.
What are your associations between jerk and the winter holidays?
Well, it comes back to my loving father, who was the best cook in our family.
And you learned from him?
I learned from him just watching him. So even though I would use an oven or an air fryer to make jerk at home, he actually had a whole jerk set up in the backyard. And what that looks like is an oil drum that's been cut lengthwise and hinges to create a smoker. If you travel across the country, there's so many vendors on roadsides selling jerk from these oil drums. The real jerk centers have the square footage to actually have a pit to do the smoking and the leaves and everything else. But so my dad had built one in the backyard, and he would always, whether there were funeral repasts that they would ask him to jerk the chicken for, or infamously my 25th birthday when I came back to Jamaica after living in Toronto for some time, he jerked 100 pounds of chicken by himself.
Oh my!
With no help, and he was in his element.
That's quite a homecoming, Vaughn.
It was a homecoming, yes. But being young and seeing my dad look at Christmas with such reverence, and he wasn't a church-going man, but it was like the purposefulness of the Christmas week and what that would look like. So I knew once he got his paycheck from November, you'd start seeing special items being purchased. The fancy sodas, the good shortbread cookies. But when it came on to cooking the dinner, like he would start at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it wasn't like an American Thanksgiving where, all right, we have to serve at noon. No, we serve it when it's done. As my father's passed away, I now have more reverence to the holiday. And I try and honor him through the things that he taught me and focusing on his favorite dishes.
When you make jerk now, do you try to match his recipe?
I can't. Let's just be very honest. That was a losing battle before I even got out the gate. And infamously, I challenged him one year. I can make the better jerk chicken. And he was like, okay.
How old were you when you threw down that challenge?
5 years ago, during the pandemic.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was like, you know what? I think I got it down now. And no, I lost gloriously.
Who judged it?
Oh, my mother and my aunt. But then when I realized is that my father's jerk sauce, which is a gravy that you serve with it, he added boxed orange juice. That was his secret ingredient. Just commercial orange juice. I was being too fancy. I used pineapple, no, boxed orange juice. Or better yet, a teaspoon of frozen Minute Maid. Concentrate.
Did you agree with the verdict?
God, yes. That small addition to it really just unlocked that flavor bomb of the jerk chicken, because there is lime juice in the jerk marinade, but that little bit of orange juice in the gravy just really took it up a notch. And I still can't match it with how he fixes it. He never used a recipe. Everything you do by eyesight. And as an engineer, that man was really good. And every time he made it, it tastes the same. Whereas, unfortunately, with mine, every time I make mine, it tastes a little bit different.
Can you describe the labor associated with making jerk? Is it intensive in that way?
If you're running a restaurant, it is. But if you were to do it at home, it's a waiting game. Again, the marinade, I do it for 48 hours. That's a proper way of doing it. And also the smoking, doing it in the oven, it's good. But I actually put soaked mesquite chips and put them in the bottom of the oven in an aluminum tray to try and turn the oven into a little bit of a smoker system. That's my way of doing it, because I don't have the affinity to do what my dad did with the coals and the oil drum and the whole rigmarole of that.
In Jamaica, is jerk kind of a fancy, elegant, special, expensive kind of food, or is it something that people eat kind of as an everyday type of thing?
It's an everyday thing. It used to be that Friday, Saturday night street food that you'd grab. But now we have a chain of restaurants called Island Grill, and jerk is the cornerstone of that fast food menu. And then there are, of course, so many other independent restaurants. Everybody will have jerk on a Friday night. If you go to a takeout restaurant and if there's no jerk on the Friday menu, people will say, oh, you're not ready for service. It's the food of the people. We protect it fiercely. When other chefs try to capitalize and colonialize what we have as jerk with not using any of the 5 core ingredients that I mentioned before, like jalapenos, that's not jerk. Cilantro, that's not jerk. And even though I can appreciate people trying to make it their own, this is not one of those dishes that you can stray from the core ingredients, because then what you have is nowhere near what you'd expect jerk to taste like.
What does it taste like? Can you describe the flavor profile?
Oh, yeah. Think of the best barbecue you've ever had with a lot of allspice. And then, of course, there is that nice heat from the Scotch bonnet pepper that with the first bite, you're like, oh my God, that's delicious. And then you start feeling, you're like, whew. And then the heat starts to rise up. But it's not a heat that you immediately want to do away with. The spiciness of it brings you back and you just can't stop eating.
Do you have room at your table for another guest?
You're always welcome. One year, infamously, our neighbors, they were going through a hard time, and we knew that they were not going to have a Christmas like ours. And, my father just quietly, did the thing of talking over the back fence. And he said, oh, yeah, you guys should just come in. And they're like, we have family here visiting from the countryside. He said, bring them. And even with those extra people, we had more than enough. And I think that's one of the metaphors of a Jamaican Christmas, even now living in the shadows of Melissa, is that we'll always have room at our table for so many others.
In your article, you quote Chef Gariel Ferguson, where he says, jerk is freedom manifested in food. Can you elaborate on how freedom can be captured in something we eat?
When you think back, or even try to think back of the atrocities of enslavement and the fact that they were able to still create some of the best recipes that we have in every culture in the world came out of necessity. It wasn't the Michelin-starred service, and it wasn't any recipe from Escoffier. It came out of struggles from communities or people who have had a history of hardship. You can look at jerk in itself, that we have people who rejected a system. And out of that, they created sustenance that wasn't just sustenance, but something that has become a legacy. And again, if it wasn't for that freedom, we wouldn't have jerk today.
How much of the history of jerk do you think most people are aware of, Vaughn?
Oh, I think say that 98% of it people don't know. Also Jamaicans. The idea of understanding where our food comes from wasn't imparted on many of us because of the ease of supermarkets and restaurants. But when it comes to jerk, most people know about the maroons, but they don't know about the Taino aspect. And without the Taino aspect, there would not be jerk. Those are our indigenous people of the Caribbean. So it's important to understand, again, that there were two cultures that met in the mountain ranges of Jamaica, that without a shared language and without seeing that other ever before, united over the understanding there was a common enemy down the hill and bonded over freedom through food.
Are there ways that this food, jerk, is misunderstood outside of Jamaica?
That's a whole other episode, Ari. And the answer is a resounding yes. There are so many chefs and restaurants and brands that want to capitalize on Jamaican jerk. There are people who believe that they've had jerk, and until they come to Jamaica, where they have it in a resort or they have it from one of our local restaurants. And I love seeing this. I love just standing there and looking at people, and when they bite into it, they have this Damascene conversion, and they're like, "Well, what are they serving me?" So many people just think that jerk is just spiciness. Infamously, we know Jamie Oliver and his punchy jerk rice that was microwavable. Ugh.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, but exactly. And we had Campbell's soup. They had a jerk soup. And I'm like, no, you can't jerk soup. Like, what is going on? So many people just throw the name on it to sell the item.
Since jerk has become part of everyday cuisine, has that changed its role during the holidays?
No, and there's always space at the table for jerk. you can have it every day and still not tire of it. Because especially if you go to your favorite restaurant or your favorite jerk center, it's just the skill and the labor intensiveness that go into making real, with air quotes, real Jamaican jerk that you really can appreciate it. So over the holidays, you'll take those extra steps. You won't just do a quick marinade. You will leave it in the fridge for 2 days. You'll either make your own marinade or buy one of the good brands that we have here. And you'll take your time to make it, the slow roast process of making it. So it's always special at the holidays, even though it's something you can have every day.
Vaughn, why do you think food is such a powerful way of connecting during the holidays with one another, but also through time?
You can look at food as a family tree, because each person at that table will remember that dish being done by someone else who's gone before. Regardless of whatever we're going through in our lives, for those few hours, we can just connect through that memory. And at the holidays, because we spend more time and extra money, even though there may not be extra really, but we go the extra mile to have that celebration. I think we do that because we owe it to our ancestors who may not have had much to celebrate. We now have it and we owe it to them for the work that they put in, to show that we not only honor them, but we're holding on to those traditions and that we're working to pass those down.
Vaughn, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you for talking to me and sharing this rich history of jerk with me.
Thank you for your time, Ari. I really appreciate it.
To read Vaughn Stafford Gray's article on Jamaican jerk and Elisa Huff's piece, including the recipe for her family's Filipino torta, visit smithsonianmag.com. We'll put a link in our show notes. On the next episode of There's More to That, we'll follow a story from the mid-1800s about a teenager in Maryland who successfully escaped slavery. His handwritten emancipation narrative was recently discovered on someone's porch in Rhode Island. If you like this show, please consider leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's More to That is a production of Smithsonian Magazine and PRX Productions. From the magazine, our team is me, Debra Rosenberg, and Brian Wolly. From PRX, our team is Ali Budner, Cleo Levin, Genevieve Sponsler, Sandra Lopez-Monsalve, and Edwin Ochoa. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzales. Our episode artwork is by Emily Lankiewicz, fact-checking by Stephanie Abramson. I'm Ari Daniel. Thanks for listening. Do your cousins bring anything to this meal, or are you making everything?
They bring themselves. And this has been going from the dawn of time. But it's fine. So one year we asked them to bring mashed potatoes, and my aunt brought, and they will hate that I'm sharing this, a box of Idaho spuds.
Uncooked.
Just a box of Idaho spuds. I'm serving dinner and I'm looking at the box, looking at her, looking at the box, looking at her. And I'm like, what is this? This is not even potatoes. And she said, well, you just add hot water and it becomes mashed potatoes. I'm like, no. It's not just add hot water. But I'm a gracious host. I zhuzhed it up. And that was the last time we asked her to bring something.
Right.